is Sean Quinn. I'm here doing my steps PowerPoint, I guess you could say, for COM369 for the few of you that are in the class. And today I'm going to talk about sort of at least outlining 5 steps to control the American media and entertainment industry and how that goes on, and 5 steps to prevent that from happening, just as outlined in the second part of this assignment. So let's get cracking, shall we? So first thing first, if you go back and look at the rubric, is I'm basically now an elected president, and so now I get to find creative ways to control the American media and entertainment and just kind of simulate what we've learned and how other countries are controlling their media and entertainment. So step 1, it begins with encouraging and allowing mega mergers between entertainment companies. We talked a lot about this at the beginning of the quarter, and I'm going to whip out the laser pointer here to help me out. So here's my handy dandy laser pointer. We'll put that on the side not to distract you. So one of the important things to note is that these conglomerates, these mega media mergers that between, you have Comcast and NBC Universal, Disney buying Marvel, AT&T wants to buy Time Warner. This merger, by the way, has been really in the news because you have a massive cellular company trying to purchase a TV company. I mean, it's unlike anything we've ever seen before. Teddy Roosevelt, who was really opposed to mergers, would be rolling in his grave if he heard about this. Anyways, though, these companies are merging, and we're getting less and less small companies becoming bigger and bigger small companies in that sense. How I'm kind of trying to phrase this is that someone like Disney can buy all the movie studios they want. They can purchase all the animation studios and get all the employees, so that any movie that could come out could be a Disney movie. I mean, it really is that simple. AT&T could dominate the cell phone market. I mean, can you name that many cell phone companies besides just Verizon and AT&T? Not really. And now AT&T is going to stick its hand in the bucket of television and try to get involved in there. One of the more controversial ones that we've really heard about is Sinclair, and I encourage you to look up whoever you feel politically. Look up just it's a John Oliver Last Week Tonight YouTube video on Sinclair Broadcast Group. And one of the things that sort of caught my eye as a journalism major is just how the scripts for all these Sinclair-owned news stations were all the same. So let's say Sinclair, who does now own a significant number of television stations, they want to air a message on behalf of their company, but you don't know it. You don't know that it's a Sinclair ad. Well, every Sinclair-run news station can do a 3 to 4 minute news story with the exact same script, the exact same transitions, the exact same approach. I mean, you would hear 80 different news stations across the country broadcasting the exact same message, because Sinclair has their message they want to get out, and if Sinclair owns every television station, they can pretty much do what they want. It's free realm, really. And who has the right to deny or approve mergers between companies like Disney, Comcast and NBC Universal, AT&T and Time Warner? That's really on the FCC and the Department of Justice. They have the legal fortitude to say whether or not can Sinclair buy all the television stations in the country and whatsoever. So that would be one of the first steps that me as president, would do, is start to encourage these mergers and have less diversity, if you will, and less options to choose from. Let me get out of the laser pointer here. We'll go to the next slide. Okay, so gradual budget cuts for public television and radio. Now this is more so a government sort of impeding on different options to choose from. For those that don't know, PBS and NPR, they're mostly funded, they're public television and public radio, so they are funded by the public. But a significant portion of their budget comes from the government. And without government funding, they significantly have less operations to choose from. And it's not so much the national PBS or the national NPR headquarters that really gets hit hard, but it's the local stations. So your local NPR station in Seattle, your local NPR station in Spokane, or your local PBS station in Seattle at KCTS. These stations, if they had budget cuts, would basically have a lot less programming. They wouldn't be able to operate. I mean, their salaries of the people that work there and the shows they can air, that money comes from the public and it comes from the government. And without that government funding, it doesn't have, it significantly cuts the options to choose from. And in my personal opinion as a journalist, I have found that sources like PBS and NPR tend to be more centered and less politically biased, which makes it more reliable as a journalism source. And when you cut these options like PBS and NPR, there's less options to choose from in the market. And more often than not, you're going to have to choose from options like CNN or Fox News. And whether you think they lean left or right, that's more political inclination for these news companies. And so I think it's important that PBS and NPR is out there and can exist. And if I was president and I cut their budgets, that's less media to choose from. And honestly, it creates a more politically involved media organizations. Number 3 of trying to, I guess, have my domain and wrath on the American media and the entertainment is to appoint judges to the U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals and the Supreme Court for more control of the law. This one's pretty straightforward. Honestly, it doesn't really take much to explain. The Supreme Court and the U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals, they all fall under the federal judicial system. Now, the judicial system pretty much breaks down, I'm not a lawyer, so I can't really say for sure how the exact inner workings are behind it. But from my interpretation, you have the municipal court, so that's like your city courthouse. So if you get like a traffic ticket in the city of Ellensburg, you're probably going to go to the Ellensburg courthouse or the Kittitas County courthouse. Now then you have the state court, so you have state Supreme Court and state courts where if you commit like a modest crime or something like that, or a pretty big crime, you're probably going to go to a state court. And those are usually in the big cities. Like if you commit a crime that's worthy of the state, then you go usually to Seattle or Olympia or something like that. And the federal court system, you really sort of you have these obviously 3 branches of government: executive, legislative, and judicial. A lot of the stuff and a lot of our laws go through the Supreme Court. You know, one of the big reasons why these journalists, if you go back and look at the movie The Post, one of my favorite movies, the New York Times and the Washington Post and all these newspapers really wanted to publish these stories, these anti-government stories that basically had some sources and whistleblowers that were basically telling you, hey, newspapers, look what the bad things that the Nixon administration and whatnot are doing. You should publish this in your newspapers. Well, the government felt that that was not right and that it would hinder national security, so they sued them. And the U.S. Supreme Court said that the New York Times and the Washington Post can basically post at free will things that are going against the government. And it allows whistleblowers to come out and basically say, the government is doing this bad thing, you should take a look at this, you should look at this story. And by appointing judges, the president has the authority to, as you've heard with Brett Kavanaugh and Neil Gorsuch, Supreme Court Justice Neil Gorsuch, that the president has the authority to appoint judges to the Supreme Court, and I believe he has authority to appoint judges to the U.S. Circuit Courts. And so these guys have tremendous impact on the laws regarding journalism and how it's done in the United States. And by me, the president, appointing these judges, it significantly hinders any progress toward the Americans having any say in law and what is legal and what is not legal. And it's really that straightforward. And number 4 is private fundraisers, phantom buyers, and withhold advertising. Take a look at this interesting this little flyer I saw, and it does really concern me as someone that is somewhat interested in politics. It says, you're invited to a fundraising reception in honor of Councilman John Dumitro, and it's a candidate for the mayor of a town called Orange. Look how much it costs to attend this thing. $250 for a couple, $500 for a sponsor, and $1,000 corporate. And it's not only, the money gets to go to basically, hey, councilman, can you do this for me? And basically, it's a kind of a form of bribery that's not really regulated very well. You can basically cough up the cash as anybody can do this. The president can do it. Anyone in the government can. They can privately cough up their own money, their own time, to any newspaper or television station or any network, and give them as much money as they want to basically inhibit them, to encourage them to publish whatever they want. Or if you don't like a certain newspaper, you can encourage companies to withhold their advertising. So, for example, President Sean Quinn, I think that the Seattle Times, or in this case, let's go with the Ellensburg Daily Record. The Ellensburg Daily Record is publishing all these things that are against my agenda. They're being mean to me, and I don't like it, and the things they publish, I don't like. So what I want to do in my position of power is I get to tell advertisers, the people who basically give these newspapers a license to operate. If it weren't for advertisers, there would be no newspapers, there'd be no television networks, there wouldn't be anything. There'd be any local news stations. Advertising is extremely important. And if I were to tell these advertisers, don't give them your money. Just don't give them your money. That's a tremendous amount of influence, and I don't have to do that publicly. I can meet with the executives of all these big companies, or I can meet with whoever I want and just tell them, don't give the Ellensburg Daily Record money. That is a huge impact, and can significantly hinder their operating budget. And if everyone says, well, President Sean says I shouldn't give money to the Ellensburg Daily Record, then I'm not going to give my money to the Ellensburg Daily Record. And the same works vice versa. I can encourage people to donate their money, I should say, to the newspapers or the television networks or to whoever I like, without really reaping any consequence of it. And there's not really any outrage because it's First Amendment. I can tell anybody to give money for who they want, and people might be upset, but they can't really do anything about it. So money plays a really big role in giving these media companies a platform to operate, these entertainment companies a platform to operate. And just by a tweet or me speaking, I can influence the advertising budgets for all these different media companies. And so it's really fascinating. And lastly, allowing fake news and no punishment. Over the last 4 or 5 years, fake news has been such a well-recognized term, and for good reason. Fake news really is everywhere, and I don't think you have to be a Democrat or a Republican to deny that fake news is a problem in the country, and it's appearing anywhere. But one of the things as a president is sometimes I might like certain bits and pieces of fake news. Donald Trump may not like the fake news about him, but let's say I love the fake news that's being dished on the opposing party or people that are my enemies. I can encourage my Supreme Court justices or whoever or any social media company for that matter to say, let the fake news be there. We won't punish fake news. Fake news can thrive. In that way, I can subtly tell people to trash any of my opponents in that way. And it's important that with fake news could you argue that it's a form of the freedom of the press? Because someone is publishing it. They can lie. Now, they can't defame, or they can't post lies that are clearly lies that they can be sued in court for libel or whatnot. But other fake news, I can absolutely encourage it, and it can do some serious damage to my opponents. And serious damage to just about anybody that I don't like, or any idea I don't like. Okay, well, that was a lot of bad things that can scare people away, and obviously we don't want that to happen. So, now I'm going to come up with 5 ways to prevent these from happening. These 5 things that we talked about that aren't very good in some instances, so we're going to try to prevent them from happening. So we'll go back first slide where I talked about encouraging and allowing mega mergers between entertainment companies. These companies cannot merge. These big conglomerates cannot become a thing unless the Department of Justice, the FTC, and the FCC basically sign off on it. And I want to talk about in 2011. So NBC is a big news network. Everyone knows about them. They also own Universal Studios and Universal Pictures, a movie company. In 2011, they were merging with Comcast, a cable company. And it was approved by the FCC and the Department of Justice. So if it weren't for their signatures and their stamp of approval, they would not be a thing. And the important thing to note is these governing bodies, the Department of Justice and the FCC, these people are appointed by me. As president and as a member of the executive branch, along with the legislative branch, we have power to basically say who can be on these boards. And it was really important, as you saw, with like Ajit Pai, who is the chairman of the FCC. He has a significant presence and voice in, can these mergers happen? And just, I believe about a week ago, when AT&T and Time Warner were going through their merging process, it was Ajit Pai and the FCC that said, we are not going to approve this to happen. They have to go through the courts. So these voices, these members of these different governing bodies have a significant say in if these conglomerates or these mergers can happen. So it's up to the people to vote me in as president and to vote for their legislative members. But we have the power to appoint the members of the FCC and the FTC and the U.S. Justice Department to allow these mergers to happen. So very important to note who your president is and who your legislative members are. And now number two that it's really important to be talked about is gradual budget cuts for public television and radio. Now, I don't necessarily, as president, have massive say in trying to give back to the PBS and NPR. I can certainly voice my support locally on my different social media platforms, like Twitter or Facebook, and of course, my own private money I can give to these different public stations. But it's important that when you fight fire with fire, that the public has a huge say in keeping these stations around. So you see these all the time on PBS, voted #1 public trust. Together we are exploring new places one star at a time. Support your local PBS station today with a special gift today. You hear it all the time in the commercials or in between the shows you see in PBS. With support from viewers like you. Thank you. And from NPR, #WhyPublicRadio. Donate to support. These stations, yes, they get a decent budget from the government, but their budget also significantly comes from their communities. And if you see that President Trump, or back then a long time ago when then candidate Romney was running for president, and how he said he wanted to defund PBS, you can counter that with your own money. I don't have control of whether you as a person want to give money to NPR or PBS. So if you want to fight me, but with me saying, let's cut the money and cut the funding for PBS and NPR, you can give your money to them to try to keep them surviving. Even if it is for a short amount of time, if I slash their funds, it's certainly better than nothing. Now, it's important when you go back to the third slide from earlier, how I said appointing judges to the U.S. Supreme Court of Appeals and Supreme Court for more control of law. I can do the same vice versa. If I am a president of the more sane political spectrum, I can appoint my own judges to the U.S. Supreme Court of Appeals and Supreme Court to try to prevent these mega mergers from happening and try to have more say in the laws. And for example, in these other countries where journalists are punished for publishing these articles, I can appoint justices and judges who will say, no, we want to encourage these journalists to come out and speak forward. We don't want journalists to feel like they have to hide. We don't want self-censorship. So judges and justices can not only inhibit these journalists from their work, they can also allow them to do the work that they would like to do. And they can pass laws that protect even whistleblowers, and have shield laws where sources who wishes to remain anonymous can continue to remain anonymous, and that is all thanks to the work of the Supreme Court and different U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals. Now this one is a little bit more complicated, but I'll kind of try to break it down more simply. So we talked about the different people pulling away their money and advertisers taking away their money from these newspapers, or people in the government secretly coughing up the dough to the news organizations they like. There is a tax form called the Form 990, and basically put, the IRS governs this form, and what it is that these foundations and these different companies just have to disclose their grants and their annual tax filings. But sometimes, if you kind of disguise yourself as a nonprofit, they don't have to say, people that are, let me phrase it this way, it's a little complicated. The list of donors with the Form 990 is specifically excluded from the information available for public inspection, except for donors to private foundations and political organizations. Simply put, I want to abolish this form. I want to make the money you give to advertisers, or advertisers giving the money to newspapers, I want to make that as open and as transparent as possible. So, for example, if Warren Buffett coughs up $5 million to the Seattle Times, in theory, in a free land, in a land of liberty and justice, should be able to see that Warren Buffett gave $5 million to keep the Seattle Times afloat. Or let's say GE doesn't like them as a company, they don't like the way the Washington Post is bashing Trump. So GE pulls all their ads from the Washington Post. I believe that this should be visible and as transparent as possible. It's sort of like with President Trump when he was originally running, how people wanted to see his tax returns. Any money transaction should be shown in a transparent way and should be accessible to the public. Now, I'm not calling for us to see President Trump's bank account, or see his credit card information, or see his social security number. But I believe in a free way that you should be able to see the money that goes to different organizations and see who is sort of giving Fox News or giving CNN or giving the Seattle Times a platform to operate. And forms like these play a significant role in that, as does the IRS, because they govern these forms. And the last step, of course, is that we want to encourage social media companies to limit or ban fake news. So earlier we talked about allowing fake news, not punishing fake news and not punishing these things that inhibit good quality journalism and can be significantly detrimental to the media companies. We can encourage, as a government, these social media companies to limit or ban fake news. Facebook now is adding warnings to things that their algorithm labels as fake news. Twitter, as according to the Washington Post, is looking for ways to let users flag fake news and offensive content. Mark Zuckerberg recently came on the Capitol Hill and was grilled for hours about various different things, including Russia and different filings with Cambridge Analytica. But regardless, one of the key points to take away is that the government wants to get fake news away from social media. And they can do that. They can encourage them to do that. Now, we don't have control over private organizations like Facebook and Twitter, but we can tell them, hey, Facebook and Twitter, let's try to limit the fake news that gets put out there. That way we have more wholesome quality journalism, wholesome quality media and entertainment that doesn't reek of foreign influence or sort of just suspiciousness that seems off. Close the laser. To conclude the PowerPoint, the moral of the story is this. Your vote counts. Get out and vote. If you feel like you want to say, even if you're not the President of the United States, in a say in the quality of the media you consume, the entertainment, if you've read all these articles in this class and you feel like, man, I wish Disney would stop buying all these companies, or, geez, why is Fox News got such a big platform, or why does CNN have such a big platform? And these things are all possible because the government has a tremendous influence on these companies. Now, they are private, so they can't necessarily govern them completely. And one of the things I specifically didn't talk about in the PowerPoint was the government completely controlling all media and entertainment, because that's not plausible in this country. That's not a subtle way of controlling it. But the government, in a sense, is elected by by we the people. So if you want a subtle influence, a subtle voice, ever so small voice, on media and entertainment in these days, your vote makes the difference. We have a primary coming up in 2 weeks. I know a lot of people our age, especially, they don't like to vote. They don't really think that their vote counts. Or, especially the millennial generation, we're really lacking in numbers in the polls. And I significantly, I plea with you all to consider voting in the primaries. Get informed when you vote, but vote in the primaries, vote in the general election in November. Have your voice be heard. If you don't like the way the FCC is being governed, vote for a government that changes the FCC board. And if you don't wish to vote, just use your voice too. Tweet the FCC. Send messages to the FCC's comment board. Call the FCC. Do different things. Get your voice heard, whether it's vocally, online, or by a ballot. It's that simple. Thanks again for listening to my PowerPoint. I know I stumbled through a lot of words. This is sort of a assignment that I struggled a little bit with, but hopefully, since we're all not reading this from a teleprompter, we can all do our best. And I look forward to seeing all of your other PowerPoints. Hopefully this one goes well. If you have any other comments or concerns or questions you have for me, you can hit me up on Canvas. Just message me there. Otherwise, I hope you enjoyed the PowerPoint, and I look forward to seeing all of you guys. Thank you.